The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Opportunities on Windows. It's your time to shine. Our guest speaker today is Mark D'Souza. He's the Director, Audience Marketing at Microsoft Corporation India Private Limited. Mark D'Souza is Director, Audience Marketing at Microsoft and focuses on enabling the software developer community in India, especially on Windows 8 and Windows Phone platforms. He has over 17 years of IT experience and, in a prior role, managed a portfolio of IT applications as Group Program Manager at the Business Intelligence Center of Excellence, Microsoft IT. In 2002, Mark was selected as one of the initial Microsoft MVPs, Most Valuable Professional from India, for his contribution to the local technical communities. Prior to Microsoft, Mark worked with Sagacious Technologies and CDAC. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Aradhana. Can you hear me?
Voice is audible. You can please continue.
Aradhana, can you hear me?
Yes, Mark, your voice is audible. You can continue.
All right. Thanks for the introduction and welcome to everyone who's joined in for today's webinar. Hopefully some of you have already attended last week's webinar and have some context about what I'm going to be talking today. But for those of you for whom this is the first time you're listening to a webinar on Windows, welcome to you also, and we'll try and cover some of the content that we covered from last week. But essentially today's session was focusing primarily on opportunities on Windows that are available to both small organizations as well as individual developers. And I'll touch upon both aspects, both from an organizational aspect as well as from an individual developer aspect. I also want to highlight the fact that you can also reach out to us through multiple channels. You'll notice on the slide at the bottom left-hand corner, we're accessible on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on TechGig. We have a company page through which you can keep up to date with all the various happenings that we do within India. So moving forward, let's get directly into today's session. Last week I covered about how you as an app builder or a solution builder can leverage great device experiences for your own solutions and power those solutions and services through the power of the cloud. Today what we're going to cover is opportunities that exist for an independent software developer and ISV, independent software vendor and ISV, as well as opportunities that exist for individual software developers or freelancers on Windows. We talk also a little bit about how you can ramp up on your skill set with respect to developing solutions and applications on Windows and what self-paced learning opportunities exist. What kind of local support is available within India for you and how you can reach out to us whenever you need the appropriate assistance. And also we'll spend some time talking about how you can find stimulus to build the next innovative solution, because this is one common question that I get asked whenever I talk to both companies as well as individuals, is about what potential ideas might actually work in the marketplace. And I know that many of you struggle with that in terms of determining what the next big thing could be. And we'll endeavor to talk a little bit about some areas in which you can take inspiration from when it comes to building the next innovative solution. And of course, this is by no means exhaustive, because I'm sure many of you might have creative ideas of your own. But for those of you who are trying to find inspiration about what that next innovative solution will be, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that also. One of the other things that we'll do differently in today's webinar compared to last week's webinar is that last week I had a lot of content that I needed to cover, and consequently we had only about 5 minutes of time available at the end of the webinar for questions. So there were a lot of questions that could not be answered during the webinar, but we will get down to responding to them over email over a period of time. Today I want to spend a little bit more time answering questions. So we'll probably finish off the content of this webinar in about 40 to 45 minutes so that we have at least about 15 minutes or so available to answer your questions. So the first thing we'll touch upon is this new offering that we have for independent software vendors or ISVs and small organizations within India who are working in the software development space. And we've recently launched this only last month in December. It's called Code for Honor, and we're billing this as Microsoft Solution Excellence Awards for 2014, and we hope that over time this will become an annual competition that exists for small companies, small to medium companies. So what does this Solution Excellence Award require you to do? Code for Honor essentially requires that you submit an app or a solution that has the potential for large-scale impact. And I'll explain a little bit about what kind of solutions those could be. But in addition to impact, we also look at the quality of implementation as well as the target audience that you're trying to reach and the breadth of that target audience. So these are some of the key things that you need to keep in mind if you're planning to take part in Code for Honor, which is going to be a very immense, valuable platform for ISVs to showcase their existing solutions that can be enhanced using emerging technologies like smart devices as well as the cloud, and also eventually over time actually roll it out into the marketplace. So one of the key aspects to keep in mind for the Code for Honor competition is that it's open to companies, not individuals, but open to companies which are less than 8 years old and having less than 200 employees. So one of the key goals that we set for Code for Honor was to try and discover new companies or relatively new companies which have not yet reached a critical mass in which they can be able to get the right set of recognition for their solutions on their own, but need a platform like Code for Honor to be able to give them that. So therefore, very large companies that might have already reached a critical mass in terms of size or in terms of revenue may not necessarily be the right target for this kind of opportunity. The opportunity for Code for Honor is primarily going to be with small and medium companies. And we've defined what we consider to be small and medium companies. So typically a small company would be less than or equal to 50 employees, and a medium company would be in the range of 50 to 200 employees. Now, the categories in which you can potentially submit an entry for Code for Honor are as follows. We're looking for large enterprise solutions. We're looking for micro, small, and medium enterprise solutions. And there could be certain cases where a solution is applicable both for a micro, small, medium kind of enterprise as well as for a large enterprise. But the key difference that we will look at when it comes to solutions for micro, small, and medium enterprises is that the solution should be very cost effective, easy to deploy, easy to maintain, and should be, should essentially cover all the key requirements that a micro, small, or medium enterprise requires. But large enterprises, on the other hand, tend to have a lot more complexities in business logic. So therefore, the large enterprise solution may not necessarily be the most cost effective. It might, be relatively expensive compared to the MSME solution. It might have a lot more complicated features, and it could potentially also have a higher total cost of ownership. So when it comes to the large enterprise solution, the ability to handle multiple geographies, very complex business rules, and typically all the traits that define a large enterprise are going to be key to making a good solution in that space. Whereas with MSME, the focus will be on simplicity, the focus will be on being able to make it easy to deploy, easy to train, and so on and so forth. The next set of categories are government enablement solutions, and I'll explain a little bit about what we mean here. So typically, if you think of the governments, both the state governments as well as central government, they have a bunch of ministries within them, and these ministries occasionally need to talk to each other as well as need to talk to associated departments that might be related to the government. So for example, let's say the Home Ministry might need to talk to the police, might need to talk to the Finance Ministry, may need to talk to various other associated departments. And to facilitate all these various not only communication but also workflows that occur between various government entities, IT is a very critical entity. It could also include things related to women's security, for example, or it could include things related to services that are provided, for example, in the case of, let's say, an Aadhaar card, or in the case of the passport office, or in the case of even rail transport like IRCTC and so on. So citizen services could encompass a wide range of these kinds of solutions. The final category is social good, and there might be some overlap between solutions that are developed for social good as well as citizen services, because in effect any solution that is developed for citizen services will in effect also be relevant for social good. But the social good category has an additional angle associated with it, and that is these solutions should use open government data. And what I'll explain a little bit about what I mean by open government data. The National Informatics Center, NIC, has launched a data portal for India, which encompasses over 5,000 data sets that have been made available by the government of India for use by app builders as well as for use by data analysts and researchers and so on. Now this is a humongous amount of data, over 5,000 different data sets. And if you go to the website data.gov.in, you can actually see those data sets yourself. Many of them are available in formats like Excel and so on that are easily consumable within your solution. Now making the data set available is one aspect of the story, but using that data in a manner that is beneficial for social good and making that data or unleashing the potential of that data is really what we are looking forward to seeing from ISVs that take part in this fifth category. Now, if you want to check out data.gov.in, we strongly encourage you doing that, and we also have a micro site within the data.gov.in portal related to Code for Honor, which has additional resources about how you could potentially come up with solutions for social good using the variety of data sets that are available over there. So do take a look at that also. So having told you about the 5 categories that are available for organizations to take part in the Code for Honor contest, let's go into some of the phases that the contest would comprise of. So the first phase, which is currently ongoing, is the project synopsis phase. So you typically register your company and then submit a project synopsis or a solution synopsis as we call it. And this stage is currently ongoing till the end of January. So for the months of December and January, we're accepting the solution synopsis from companies that intend to participate in this competition. And then the next phase after that will be the solution detail phase. And in the solution detail phase, we'll first typically ask participants to create a video presentation of the solution. So you could shoot a video using a normal handycam or even a webcam, The video should comprise some aspects of your solution so that we know that there are some modules at least that have been implemented. We know that you may not be able to do an entire demo because the time frame that will be given you for the video would typically be around 10 minutes or so. So we don't expect a complete end-to-end demonstration, but we definitely expect some aspects of a solution to be demonstrated, and we expect to hear your team talking about the solution or the solution that is being envisaged. And subsequent to that, there will be telephonic interviews during which we will ask specific questions related to how you went about building the solution, what the technical architecture looks like, how you intend to actually deploy the solution in real life, what are the challenges that you anticipate, and what your marketing model would be in terms of taking this solution to market. All this will typically happen in the February-March timeframe. Once that phase is over, the qualifiers from the solution detail phase will move into the zonal finals. And we plan to have the zonal finals in anywhere between 3 to 6 cities. This will happen in the month of April. And at the zonal finals, we expect the teams that qualify for the zonal finals to actually deliver in-person presentations. So they need to be there physically present at the zonal finals and deliver in-person presentations to juries that will comprise both external members from the industry, from NGOs, from the government, and so on, as well as potentially one jury panelist from Microsoft. So this will happen in the month of April, and then there will be a little bit of a gap to enable the qualifiers from the zonal finals to further work on their solutions before we reach the national finals in June. Again, at the national finals, the teams will be expected to present to a jury of eminent domain and technology specialists before we announce the final winners. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are curious about what the winners would get and why it would make sense for your company to participate in this particular initiative. So we have a wide range of benefits. The benefits for the Solution Excellence Awards in 2014 will be, first of all, divided by the size of the company. So for 4 categories, which is the large enterprise solution, the micro, small, medium enterprise solution, the government enablement solution, and the citizen services solution. For each of these 4 categories, there will be 2 awards, one for small companies, one for medium companies. So that brings us to a total of 8 awards. And in addition, the 9th award, which is independent of the size of the company, is best solution for social good using open government data. So that's how we will end up having 9 awards. So four categories, each having 2 awards, one for small, one for medium companies, and the final award being the special award, best solution for social good using open government data, in which you will need to require to use data.gov.in data sets. All the winning teams, all these 9 winning teams will receive a Code for Honor award. They will also receive access to potential customers, and I think that is one key takeaway for most of the companies that intend to participate, is that they're really looking for potential customers for their solutions. We also intend to set up meaningful mentor relationships with the winning teams, and essentially we are going to be having a panel of industry experts that are going to volunteer their time to coach the winning teams over a period of a few months so that they get the necessary level of expertise that a senior leader from the industry could provide to them. We will also provide winning teams the opportunities to showcase their solution to potential investors who might be interested in the business model that they're proposing along with their solution. There'll also be prize money of 2 lakhs per team and Windows devices, which include a Windows 8 device as well as a Windows Phone device for the winning teams. So that's the entire prize package that is available, and this is applicable for all of the 9 teams that win the awards. In addition, we also will be planning some kinds of incentives for the national finalists who might not be necessarily the winners of these 9 awards, some of them. So there may be some potential consolation prizes that we will also plan. Similarly, for all the folks who've reached the zonal finals, we will also plan some kind of consolation prizes for those teams. The details about all of that will be posted soon on the Code for Honor website. So I encourage all of you who are interested in taking part to take a look at that and register your team as well as submit your solution synopsis well in time so that you have an early start to the entire competition, right from the solution synopsis stage right down to the solution detail stage, which will commence in February and go on into March. And at that point, I will take a pause and check with Aradhana if there are any questions before we move on to some of the opportunities for individual developers. So Aradhana, are there any questions that have come in?
There are few
I
questions.
see a few.
Yes, you can take
I
them.
see a few, so I'm going to quickly take some of them. So Mohammed Shakir has asked a question: how to avoid dependencies on internet for smart client application using ClickOne's technology? So Mohammed, so here's one of the what the question that you asked for is primarily more related to a .NET kind of application or a thick client application which you would typically install. And remember that now with the emergence of Windows 8 as well as Windows Phone, typically most of the installations would not really happen using ClickOne's or any kind of not that technology essentially, because those were typically for .NET applications. Now you typically install it directly from the store, or optionally if you're building a line of business application, you could sideload it using enterprise keys that are available for enterprises that want to have an internal application deployed on Windows 8, Windows Phone, and so on and so forth. So the deployment mechanism might essentially change. If you are trying to target your solution to a large number of consumers, typically you would need to go through an internet distribution mechanism, because that's the simplest and easiest way to access a large number of consumers. If on the other hand the users of your application are very targeted, maybe just 3 or 4 people, then in that case you would go to a model wherein you sideload the applications. And there are specific mechanisms that you can follow to sideload a Windows 8 app or a Windows Phone app. For example, if you're a developer and you want to sideload a Windows Phone app onto your phone, Windows Phone, you would typically need to set up a developer account on the Windows Phone Dev Center and then unlock your phone so that it enables you to sideload applications directly, and that then would not require internet, because you could directly put your ZAP file onto your phone. Similar options would also exist for Windows 8, in which you could sideload applications and you could install locally. But I think related to your question, probably more related to a .NET scenario rather than a modern app scenario that would be installed either through the store or be sideloaded. Coming to Asif's question, in the Code for Honor Awards, only companies can take part or freelancers also can take part. So Asif, for the Code for Honor specifically, it is designed for companies. Having said that, however, the next part of my session will cover opportunities that are available for individual developers and freelancers also. So do keep a watch out for some of those opportunities. They will not be part of Code for Honor, because Code for Honor is designed for small and medium companies. But with respect to other opportunities that are available for freelancers and individual developers, just wait after this Q&A session, and in the next 5 minutes or so, we'll be plunging directly into that topic. Rashid has a question about where to apply. The website is codeforhonor.com. So if you go to codeforhonor.com, both the honor can be spelled both in the US as well as in the UK spelling. So whichever way you choose, codeforhonor.com, you should be taken to the right website. The next question Shahzad has is, why do we need Windows apps as opposed to desktop apps and mobile websites? Good question, Shahzad. So I think some of you who might be working on multiple form factors might wonder that, we've had Win32 applications that have been working on the desktop for quite a while. And similarly, we've also had websites that have been optimized for mobile devices. The kind of are smart enough to detect the screen size, they're smart enough to reorganize their layout and so on. So you might wonder, what's the benefit of having a native Windows modern design kind of app, right? So Shehzad, I think the question that you need to ask yourself is, what are the kind of scenarios, what are the kind of features that your app is going to provide to the end user? If, for example, the solution is primarily informational, wherein most of the content, it's mostly content driven, then in that case, having HTML5 website or having an app that is essentially fairly straightforward makes sense, because then it's only content that is being shown, and the content needs to be organized in a beautiful manner, which you can even do on a mobile website, which is a website which is optimized for mobile devices. However, let's say you had some interactive features that needed to get built in, classic example being a game. In that case, it's a lot more valuable to have a native application so that you can leverage the power of the local graphics processor and so on, especially if you use DirectX and C++ for your Windows app. And remember that you can use DirectX and C++ in a modern Windows app also, and not just in a desktop app. So that could be one scenario. Another scenario could be if you want to leverage all the additional functionality that is built into a modern Windows app. For example, contracts. For those of you who are familiar with the way Windows apps works or modern Windows apps works, they are able to share their data with other apps through what is known as contracts. So for example, you could have an app which is like, let's say, a photo app, which shares images with, let's say, the mail app. And you could actually directly be able to share information from two apps which have actually nothing to do with each other, except the fact that they understand that common shared contract. Similarly, if you wanted to do things like notifications, it's a lot easier to build in a notification using a native application, a push notification using a native application, compared to a website, because the website is never going to be able to push a notification, let's say, to a live tile until someone actually opens the website, hits the URL, opens the website, right? But with respect to Windows 8 as well as Windows Phone, you have the concept of a live tile, and you can leverage notifications to update the live tile with meaningful information. So for example, if you have a stock ticker app, and the stock ticker app has a live tile, you could potentially show the latest BSE Sensex value every 5 minutes, for example, directly on the live tile without even having to open up the app. So that kind of functionality is not really possible with respect to a standard mobile website or a desktop app. Now, a question about from Asif is whether apps need to be developed only for Windows 8 or for Windows Phone as well. Asif, for the purpose of code, that's a good question. For the purpose of Code for Honor, while the emphasis would be to develop on Windows, the range of technologies that you can use for Code for Honor is very wide. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about this. For Code for Honor, you could potentially even use non-Microsoft technologies in combination with Microsoft technologies, and that's perfectly acceptable. You could even use hardware solutions in combination with software solutions. That's perfectly acceptable too. All that we require, and of course details are there in the Code for Honor terms and conditions. So if you go to the Code for Honor website and go to the support page, you'll see that there is a link which provides details, terms and conditions. And in that you'll see some of the criteria that are required for the solutions that need to be submitted as part of this initiative. And what we say is essentially that you could use pretty much any solution. It could even be like a legacy solution, a client-server architecture. It could even be a website. All that we require is that you consider enhancing that solution to also encompass smart devices, modern devices using the modern UI philosophy, which would imply that you would either create a Windows 8 app or a Windows Phone app over and above your existing solutions. For example, your backend, your database could pretty much remain the same, and you could expose the information through web services that are then consumed by your front end, which could then be a website, which could be a Windows app, Windows 8 app, or Windows Phone app, and so on. All of these options exist. It's up to your creativity about how you go about building your solution. From our perspective, we are not mandating that you do any particular thing other than the fact that the predominant technology that you use should be based on Windows. But you are free to also use additional technologies also. For example, you could potentially have a PHP component. You could potentially have Perl script running in some server somewhere as part of your overall application. All that is fine. So it could be a completely heterogeneous solution as long as at a fundamental level, at a base level, some of the key components are running on Windows, especially the cloud aspect and especially the device aspect. All right, then Praveen asked a question about, I'm an electronics and telecom graduate and I wanted to enter the IT field. I have basic knowledge of C++ and Java. Which course would you recommend to get IT professional knowledge? So Praveen, this is slightly off topic, but what I would recommend is that to get a sense of what all options you have to be able to ramp up on your skill set, take a look at MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com, wherein there are a range of free courses that are available, and later on in this session I'll also talk about that. That will help you. These free courses will help you ramp up on various emerging technologies, not just from an app development perspective, but even from an infrastructure perspective. So learning about security, learning about networking, learning about business intelligence, databases, all of that is covered in Microsoft Virtual Academy. And the good news is that it's free for everyone. So anyone who goes to MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com can start taking the courses that are of interest to them. And I think, Aradhana, with that, I've covered most of the existing questions.
Yes, you have. You can continue with the presentation
right?
now. Yes.
All right. So now for those of you who had interest in what are the opportunities available for individual developers or freelancers, I'll move into that topic now. So one of the key things that we have for individual developers and freelancers, and even companies can take part, is the App Builders Club. If you go to appbuildersclub.com, that's the website where you'll see information related to that. We ran a Windows 8 specific challenge in November and December called the Windows 8 Winter Bonanza as part of the App Builders Club, and that challenge is now over. The last date was 31st of December, and we intend to announce the results in February. But the good news is we're going to launch a couple of new additional challenges. These will again be focused on Windows 8 apps. One of them will focus on new Windows 8 apps that are very high quality. And the second will focus primarily on existing Windows 8 apps that have got updated within a particular time frame. So which means that you enhance the apps by adding in new features, you've changed the UI a little bit and so on, and have consequently then become increased in popularity. So we're going to have one focusing on quality, and we're going to have one challenge focusing on popularity of the app on the store. So take a look at App Builders Club. Currently, you'll see some of the messaging related to the challenge that got over, which was Windows 8 Winter Bonanza. But if you keep a watch on it over the course of the next few days, maximum 1 week's time from now, we will update it with the new challenges that are going to launch. And those of you interested can participate. We have a lot of interesting incentives available for you, both from a perspective of devices. So some of the really good apps that emerge from this will get the opportunity to get Windows 8 all-in-one PCs that are touch-enabled all-in-one PCs, as well as a bunch of other incentives that are also available, including shopping vouchers and so on. But more importantly, you'll also get visibility for your app. So the winners from these challenges will also get featured on our Facebook pages, on our newsletters, as well as on the Dev Wall of Fame and App Wall of Fame that we also have on the App Builders Club website. So immense opportunity to get recognition in the community, as well as to drive further popularity of your own apps and your app portfolio. So keep a watch out for this opportunity, especially individual developers and freelancers. And of course, companies that are interested can also considering taking part in this. Now, the next step is about what are the kind of resources that are available for each one of you to jumpstart your Windows 8 app development. One of the key things that we realized when we started discussing about Windows 8 app development with developers about over a year back was that not many developers are familiar with design or user experience, UX as we call it. Most developers in India are quite conversant with coding. They know various programming languages. They're reasonably good at that, but they're not necessarily the best designers or not necessarily the best UX experts. So therefore, we thought that it would be a good opportunity for us to create certain reference templates or design reference templates to help developers who might be good at coding but not so great at design to get a jump start into the app development. And we've made 70 plus design reference templates available on the URL that should be appearing on your screen right now. And these are free to download. They're available on Codeplex, which is Microsoft's open source repository. Feel free to take these templates, customize it as required. We don't expect you to use it exactly the way it is. We definitely expect you to make enhancements to it. We expect you to enrich it further, to add more content, to add more features and so on. But this can be the starting point of your app, and the wide range of apps that are available. I've just shown you a few screenshots available there. Most of these templates have taken into consideration some of the store guidelines. The Windows Store has a set of guidelines that need to be adhered to, and most of these templates ensure that those guidelines are taken care of. Having said that, if you use these templates, remember that ultimately the app that you generate based on these templates is your responsibility. So which means the content that you add, even any additions, any changes that you make is purely your responsibility. And at no point should you think that because you've used a reference template that we provided, if there are any errors or if there are any bugs in those templates, you don't need to fix it. You absolutely have to, because it becomes your app. It's your responsibility to be able to ensure that the quality of your end app, is of a reasonably high quality. And if there are any particular issues, you've kind of resolved it before you publish it onto the store. However, if by chance you encounter any major issue with the template, you should reach out to us, and I'll mention an email address to which you can reach out to us, so that if possible, we could evaluate if there is a need to update one of the templates based on any fundamental issues that you might find. Moving on, so this was the email alias that I just mentioned. wa8pitcrew@microsoft.com is the place at which you can send us email asking your technical queries related to both Windows 8 development as well as Windows Phone development. And when you send your app, let's say you've been working on a Windows 8 app, and you send your app to the App Lab, what the App Lab does is it will review your app. It will give you feedback about how you can improve your app, and based on that, you can then decide which parts of the feedback to take into consideration, which parts to ignore, and so on. It's purely up to you. You can decide which parts of the feedback to implement. But based on the overall feedback that we provide to you, we also give your app a grade. The grade ranges right at the bottom from elementary on to silver, then to gold, then to platinum. And this is some kind of a level of an indication of the quality of your app. So obviously, as many of you should be aspiring towards creating gold and platinum apps, because once you get to a stage of building gold and platinum apps, the amount of recognition that you can get both on the Dev Wall of Fame, App Wall of Fame, and through our various challenges that we just mentioned, which are going to be launched, will be immense. So I think the goal that each one of you as an app builder should have is to start creating really good high quality apps. One, so that you can get recognition through these challenges, but second, also so that you can actually get real world consumers of your apps, so that you can actually monetize your apps either through advertising or through actually having paid apps or through having in-app purchases. The Windows platform gives you all those opportunities, both to have free apps as well as paid apps, but in addition also to have in-app purchases in which you could potentially have a free app. But let's say if it was a game and you wanted the consumer wanted to move from level 4 of the game to level 5 of the game, then there would be an incremental charge that could be levied by you, and that could be one avenue through which you could monetize your app. So do remember wa.pitcore.microsoft.com. It's your single one-stop resource to get many of your technical queries related to Windows 8 app development as well as Windows Phone app development resolved. This is based in India. This is a unique initiative that we've launched in India. There are not many other countries that have this, free consulting available. Do remember that we get a lot of queries every day. So sometimes it does take about 4 to 5 days for the App Lab to respond to some of the queries. So you might have to be patient depending upon the queue of queries that have accumulated in a particular day. And then here are the next steps that you can note down, or if you want to wait till the recording of this webinar becomes available tomorrow. The next steps includes a wide variety of resources that you can leverage depending upon whether you are an independent software vendor or a startup company. You can definitely go to the Code for Honor website that I've listed over there. Similarly, if you're an individual software developer or a freelancer, take a look at App Builders Club. And then if you are just beginning your journey of learning about Windows 8 app development and Windows Phone app development, and you want to kind of access free resources that will help you learn about the latest technologies, go to microsoftvirtualacademy.com. Some of you might be interested in setting up a Windows Dev account. Take a look at that URL there, which will take you directly to the place through which you can set up a Windows developer account. Those of you who are looking for getting a Windows 8 trial so that you can start exploring Windows 8 development, getting the Windows 8 Enterprise, Windows 8.1 Enterprise trial, you can do that through going to the URL that I mentioned on the slide. You will need some flavor of Visual Studio. We recommend using Visual Studio Express 2013 for Windows. If you do not already have Visual Studio, maybe as part of your company, or you don't have Visual Studio installed on your personal development machine, VS Express is available for free, so there's absolutely no botheration in terms of having to procure Visual Studio for developing Windows 8 apps. Take a look at that URL to download VS Express 2013 for Windows, free of charge. Similarly, we talked a little bit a while back about the Windows 8 templates that we've created locally within India, 70 plus templates to help you with reference designs that you can use within your own apps. Now, I know that some of you might have already built apps on iOS or Android, and you might be wondering, can I port my existing app? What are the kind of things that I need to keep in mind when I'm porting an app? So we have a set of resources specifically around porting iOS apps, and you can take a look at that. Again, the URL is mentioned on my slide. Similarly, if you've already built Android apps and are thinking of porting them over to Windows, there is a set of resources available for that also. This will help you reuse a certain amount of code, as well as make sure that you're keeping all the key things in mind when you're doing that porting process. In terms of local support, we've already talked about the App Lab. You can find more details about the App Lab on the website, the URL mentioned on the slide, and the email address, which is the same one that I had included in the earlier slide, which is wa.pitcrew@microsoft.com. And now I'll spend a little bit of time talking about getting inspiration for your next innovative solution. So right at the beginning of this call, we talked about the fact that while many of you might be reasonably familiar with technology, some of you might struggle with thinking about the next, really cool idea to implement in your app or solution. And there are two areas that you can look at. One of them, for example, is the data.gov.in website, where there are 5,000 plus data sets, and then by looking at those data sets, you can get some ideas about interesting apps that you can create. But another one is the Apps for Asia document that we've created in conjunction with the Asian Development Bank, ADB. So ADB and Microsoft worked together a few months ago in last year in 2013 and came up with this document of a range of app ideas that would be useful. Many of these app ideas are related to social good. And if you take a look at this document, the link again provided on the slide, you will have at least 7 categories of areas in which interesting solutions could be made. And in each of those categories, there are further sub-categories of features that could be incorporated into your solution. So this is just a starting point, and maybe by looking at some of these resources, you can get even further ideas about how to enhance your next solution. The key thing to keep in mind when building a solution is to think about who your potential users are, right? So what are the kind of consumers or what are the kind of customers who would be interested in whatever solution or app you're building? Why will they use it? Is there something already existing that they are using? How is your solution going to be better than what is already existing? If there is nothing already existing, then what are the key considerations you're going to keep in mind in terms of making your solution cost effective, scalable, how are you going to maintain your solution over a period of time? Do you need to train your potential customers and users about your solution so that they can use it in the right manner? Those are all the various angles that you will need to think about when you're building your solution. The other thing to keep in mind, especially when you're doing something related to games or entertainment, is to make your solution sticky. And what I mean by sticky means that someone should want to use your application again and again, right? And the reason for that is, it could be, for example, that you have new content and therefore they keep coming back to your application because there is new content. Or it could simply be that, like for example, in a game, that it's almost addictive in the sense that there's a certain thrill involved, there's a certain suspense involved, there's a certain cool factor involved which makes them want to come back again and again. Maybe to improve their score, maybe to engage with other players, especially if you're building a multiplayer game. Maybe it is to simply improve their skills. For example, if you're doing a vocabulary game or a word-related game, they might just want to ensure that they're improving their skills in a particular area. But there has to be some reason for them to keep coming back again and again. So therefore, I would caution for those of you who are thinking of building static content apps, please think twice before you do something like that, because most of the static content apps are never really used again by anyone who's downloaded them. Most of the time, people will download an app thinking it's interesting, they open it, they see that most of the content is static, and then they'll uninstall that app. So I really want to caution anyone who's thinking of building a static content app to ask yourself, why would anyone want to use an app like that again and again? If the content is not changing, if there is no interactivity, if there is no collaboration happening within that particular app, if there is no social angle associated with that particular app, then, and if it's just plain static content, it really does not make any sense. So keep all that in mind when you're building your next innovative solution, and take advantage of the resources that are put up available out here. Feel free to communicate with us on the w8bitcrew@microsoft.com email alias, and we look forward to hearing your progress along your app development journey. And with that, I'll pause and get in for the second round of questions. I see that there are a few that have come in. Okay, one interesting question has come in from Murthy. Murthy's question was around using platforms like Xamarin for app development towards Code for Honor. Very good question, Murthy. And yes, you can use third-party platforms like Xamarin. Xamarin, for those of you who are not familiar with it, enables you to target cross-platform solutions. And you can basically use a language like .NET, but you could actually emit out applications that run on multiple platforms, Windows, iOS, Android, and so on. So it's perfectly fine to use a cross-platform framework like Xamarin. Just make sure that you're documenting that you're planning to use that as part of your solution synopsis, and also think about what pros and cons would be involved if you developed a native solution purely on Windows 8, Windows Phone versus developing a cross-platform solution. There will be pros, there will be cons, and you can weigh that and you can decide. But from our perspective, it's legitimate to use cross-platform solutions. That's perfectly fine. Then Mohammed Shakir has a question about how to use Windows technology based in a disconnected environment when internet speed is slow. Okay, so the question seems a little broken, but I think I've understood what Mohammed Shakir meant to ask. So essentially, I think his question was related to slow internet speeds or disconnected environments. So Mohammed, typically now in this day and age, internet is fairly widely pervasive, but we have to recognize that in emerging countries like India, there may be some situations where there is limited internet or there may be no internet whatsoever. So the architectural principle of devising a solution that is intermittently connected, right, is very important. So you have to, it's more about designing an application in a manner such that it works excellently when it's on internet, but at the same time it works reasonably when it's in a disconnected mode, right? So that's the balance that you have to take. So you can have the full set of 100% of all the features enabled when you're in an internet connected environment, and then maybe you have some subset of features that are available when you're in a disconnected mode. Then later on, when it's connected back again, you could potentially have a synchronizing mechanism such that whatever data is stored on local storage in the offline mode or in the disconnected mode gets synchronized to remote data sitting in the cloud somewhere potentially when it gets connected back. So that's a standard architectural kind of practice to design applications that work both in connected environments as well as in disconnected environments. Kamal Hassan said he's a system admin and very interested on Microsoft platforms. Which one is the best for a good career? So Kamal, with respect to SysAd, I would say that take a look at the Microsoft Virtual Academy, because it contains content not just from a developer perspective, but even from a system administrator perspective. I think from your angle, key things to look at would be virtualization, cloud computing. Those are the kind of things that you should definitely keep an eye on. Virtualization is a very, very hot topic these days, and Windows Server supports Hyper-V, supports virtualization across various modes. You can find a lot more information about how you can use virtualization as well as the Windows Server Data Center Edition and so on Microsoft Virtual Academy. That's definitely one direction that I could send you in. Slightly off topic from today's session, but yeah, I know that there are a few infrastructure professionals who are also attending this session. So for those of you who are interested, not from a dev perspective, but from an infrastructure perspective, I would suggest definitely look into things like cloud computing and virtualization. Shehzad has a question about all features of Windows apps can be leveraged in desktop apps, from design to hardware to data sharing. Then why Microsoft has separated the modern lifestyle design desktop app? Why didn't it build the same features inside desktop apps? So good question, Shehzad. I think the crux of the issue really lies in terms of creating a solution that works on multiple processor architectures. As you know, when you're working in the tablet world, and in the tablet world, one of the key aspects of processor performance is not just speed, but it's also battery life. And consequently, alternative processor architectures have come out. And as you know, for example, many tablets nowadays are powered by ARM processors, which is a different architecture from x86 Intel processors, right? Now, if you have to design an architecture that works both across ARM processors as well as legacy x86 processors, you have to come up with a solution that gives you whatever is required in that kind of a scenario. And that's one of the reasons why the evolution of the whole concept of modern apps has taken off. Now, you might say that Intel's also working quite well in terms of releasing low power processing architectures and so on. And I'm sure over time, we will see even more Intel-based tablets Intel architecture-based tablets that will come out. And then maybe the rationale around having different kinds of UI and all could potentially be brought back to the fore. But for now, the other philosophy that we also have is that the modern UI philosophy is very different from the desktop philosophy, simply because the modern UI philosophy also emphasizes that applications have to be not only keyboard and mouse friendly, but they also need to be touch friendly. So consequently, when you think about those aspects, there are certain things within a desktop app that can't really be made touch friendly simply because of things like sizes of the controls, simply because of the complexity of the way the control operates and so on. And therefore you need a different kind of a UX paradigm in order to be able to make your apps touch first, which work both with touch as well as with keyboard as well as with mouse. And it's not very easy to fit all the requirements together into a legacy UI framework like desktop apps. So yeah, so multiple reasons why you need to have that kind of separation in terms of modern apps as well as desktop apps. Of course, the good news is that you're free to choose, and when you want to kind of build a solution that leverages the touch first philosophy of the modern UI design, you can choose to do that. If on the other hand, you don't care about touch, but you care more about really intense functionality and very complex controls and so on, you might opt to create a desktop app. Suneet has a question around whether these opportunities were circulated amongst TCS. Suneet is from TCS and was wondering about that. So Suneet, I'm not sure which opportunity you are talking about, whether it was the one related to the organizations or whether it's the one related to the individual app builders. I'm assuming if it's related to individual app builders, then yes, there are some TCS employees who've already started taking part in App Builders Club. But we feel free to circulate this amongst your friends and colleagues and encourage them to take part in the App Builders Club. On the other hand, remember Code for Honor. TCS is a very reputed and old company. It's been in existence for many years, and it definitely has more than 200 employees. So as a consequence, TCS is not the kind of target company that we're looking at from a Code for Honor perspective, because like I mentioned, the Code for Honor competition was primarily targeted towards small and medium software development companies. So Code for Honor may not be applicable for TCS, but the App Builders Club for individual developers within TCS definitely applicable. Feel free to circulate it amongst your peers. Shashank Srivastava has a question. As an individual, I don't have the infrastructure to support my app. How can I use Azure for the same? So good question, Shashank. So one of the areas that you might want to explore is we also have a 1 month Azure trial, which is free of charge for 1 month, which I would encourage you to explore. There are certain aspects of Azure within an app that can be tapped into. One of them is Azure Mobile Services, AMS as we call it. So Azure Mobile Services enables you to do a whole bunch of interesting things with your apps. And when I say apps, I mean not just Windows apps, but even Android apps, iOS apps. That's the interesting thing about Azure Mobile Services, that it can be the back end of any kind of front end, which includes Windows apps as well as iOS apps as well as Android apps. And that's potentially one area that I would encourage you to explore. Azure, as you know, is a pay-as-you-use offering, which means over time, obviously, you need to subscribe to Azure, maybe an annual subscription or so. But of course, to get started and to evaluate it, to understand whether it meets your requirements or not, I'd encourage you to sign up for the one month free trial. Explore it, play around with it, see how you can use it within your apps. And then if you feel comfortable, you can go in for a full 1 year subscription and so on. Vishal has a question about how about an app based on numerology, astrology, Vastu Shastra, and so on and so forth. So Vishal, in terms of the ideas, it's purely up to you. So if you're thinking about it from an app builders club perspective, definitely any idea that has potential consumers is worthwhile, as long as it meets all the requirements of the store guidelines. There are certain guidelines that are specific to certain countries. There are certain guidelines that are specific to certain age groups. So for example, if you are creating a game which potentially has some aspects of violence or some aspects of danger, then you have to make sure that there is a rating given to your game in terms of the minimum age of the person who's able to play it. So you have to keep all those things in mind. But yeah, I mean, numerology, astrology, Vastu Shastra and all that, I'm sure there are a lot of people in India who are interested in applications like that. And if you see a market, if you see a potential that people will want to use those kind of apps, by all means, you can consider building apps along those lines. With respect to Code for Honor, I'm not sure whether those necessarily would fit into any of the predefined criteria. But do take a look at the fine print and the terms and conditions, and then make a decision. Ahmed has a question around what are the technologies to develop a Windows app. So Ahmed, you would typically use multiple programming languages depending upon what your preference is. If you are familiar with object-oriented programming like C#, Java, C++, you could potentially use C# and XAML to create a Windows app. But if on the other hand you are a web developer and you're more familiar with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, you can use that also to create a Windows app. So the beauty of Windows apps is that it supports multiple technologies, including open standards like HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. So, and they are first-class citizens on the Windows app platform also. Santosh Jha has a question. I'm a .NET developer with C#. How can I go for Windows app developer? So good news, Santosh, just like I mentioned a minute ago, is that if you are already familiar with C#, learning about Windows app development can be relatively easy. There is a specific course on Microsoft Virtual Academy for C# developers to ramp up on Windows app development. I'd recommend that you go through that. It's the total duration of that course is about 8 hours, and you can choose to spend the time whenever you want. So you can break it down maybe 1 hour every day or something like that. And that's a great way to learn about ramping up on Windows app development using your existing skill set of C#. Prem Benz has a question about I'm working on big data visualization, and his question is about related technologies in big data. So Prem, around big data, one of the key things that you might want to look at is both Azure as well as SQL Server. On Azure, the interesting thing is, I'm sure you've heard of Hadoop. So we fully support Hadoop on Azure. And with respect to SQL Server, there are a wide range of business intelligence offerings that we have with respect to SQL Server itself. And you should be able to learn about both SQL Server business intelligence as well as Hadoop on Azure by getting to the MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com website. And there may be some courses there. If you don't find courses there, you should definitely look at the Microsoft Developer Network, MSDN. So go to developer.msdn.com and you should be able to search on that. The keywords that you should look out for are SQL Server Business Intelligence, and the second one being Hadoop on Windows Azure.
Mark, sorry to interrupt, but due to time constraint, I request you to take the unanswered questions offline, which I will share with you through email. So I was just informing our audience today that we have another webinar session with Microsoft next on 29th. I have provided the link on the chat itself, so if you want to speak about that, enlighten the audience.
Yeah, so I'll just spend maybe a few seconds talking about next week's webinar. So we've done 2 webinars already, mostly introductory sessions on Windows 8 and helping people understand the various resources. From next week onwards, we'll be plunging more deeper into actual coding. So that's going to be our first full-blown technical session. Most of the session will be in Visual Studio with live demos and so on. So I encourage you to attend that session, especially if you've decided that you want to learn about developing on the Windows platform. This will be a multi-part series, so which means that next week will be the first in the series of technical sessions, and there will be multiple technical sessions after that. The goal being that at the end of attending those technical sessions, you yourself will also be able to create a meaningful, useful, high quality Windows app. All right, Aradhana, that's it from my side.
I'm really thankful to you, Mark, for conducting this wonderful webinar today. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Mark, for your time. Have a great evening ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.